Normally, when I help people memorize entire books from beginning to end in another language, I don't recommend that they use things like arcades and video games. However, I've been doing just that recently, and I thought you might like some of my tips and findings and discoveries from along the way. So, if you've ever wanted to memorize an entire book in another language, this may be the most important video you ever watch. And the first tip that I have for you has to do with the memory palace technique. If you don't know what that is, it's simply a mental representation of a room like this that you layer images into that help you, through the power of association, remember the individual words and the meanings and get them into long-term memory as quickly as possible. And to make memory palaces is very fast and very easy. But here's the thing, and here's the tip. Make sure that you actually make them. It doesn't take long, and when you do, then you save yourself from doing two things at the same time. So, when I was, not so long ago, memorizing the song Celestial, I thought, I know how to do this. I've been doing this for years. I've memorized the Ribhu Gita and the Upadesa Sharam and the Nirvana Shatakam. So why don't I just deal with the song Celestial by making the memory palace as I go? I'll wing it, I said. Well, the reality is about halfway through that text, I got tired because I was doing two things at once, creating the memory palace as I went. And so you can avoid that problem by just simply making your memory palaces in advance. So to draw them should really only take about 2 to 3 minutes, and you draw them so that you're able to get a sense of where you're going, how you're going to get there, and eliminate dead ends. Eliminate things where you spend mental energy. Do I go here? Do I go there? And did I go there? Did I go there? It's a memory palace, which means that you base it on the things that you remember, not a memorized palace where you somehow have to memorize a journey. That's not what this is all about, and taking a couple of minutes to draw it out helps make sure that you are basing it only on what you remember. And then if you, like me, wind up winging it, you don't wind up in this sort of thing, well, how many, was there a staircase there or not? You don't ever get into that trouble in the first place. So that's a major, major tip for you. And I hope you take it very seriously, because, the one that I made for the Atmabodha, which is what I'm memorizing now from James Schwartz's translation, it's an incredible text. And it is something that, I need 66 stations for, and I might need a little bit more than that. But it took me maybe a little longer than 2 to 5 minutes to do because I added a number system so that I can remember the exact verses. I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But every second of preparation is worth it, and I can already tell you that from going in and taking on a challenge, like using an arcade with video games. Now, there's a lot of reasons to do this when you're dealing with foreign languages as well. So let me share you a little clip from one of my students who's really gung-ho with this, doing stories and Greek. This is Eric, and he is so inspiring how that he's applying these techniques.
Hey, Anthony. Good morning or good evening. I don't know what the time in Australia is. Hey, I want to share some success that I had with story number 2. I'd memorized the vocabulary for story number 2 last week, and then last Saturday I sat down to listen to it. And I was a little nervous because when I sat down Saturday morning, I said, well, can I recall any of the vocabulary? And he's like, total blank. I'm like, well, this might be a failure. But I played the audio file, and then I'd listen to a phrase, and then I would stop it, and then I go, okay, oh, that's that word. And then I piece together the phrase, and I piece together the sentence. And every so often I'd have to go rewind 15 seconds and play it again. But I was able to go through the entire story with above 90% comprehension. I had 3 words I had trouble on, and I have them here. Katatribi and Kathizi. And those I could actually remember the objects that told me what the words were, sounded like, but I couldn't remember the semantics, the meaning of it. But then when I allowed the file to play more, I was able to figure out what the meanings were, because Kathizi means to sit, and he sat under the tree. Hupo to dendro. Then the Heisukatsi, I just couldn't get it. It was totally blank, no pictures, no magnetic memory image and stuff. Then I went back and then I played the entire file. I played the audio file from the beginning and just read along. Super easy. It can make sense to me. So this is really great. I do want to let you know that So my plan is from Athanasa 1, I want to memorize the vocabulary of a story before I listen to it, and then go through this book this way. And then in the meantime, I am actually working on Athanasa 2 with the back of the book with the vocabulary. So I want to memorize the entire vocabulary before I actually start story number 1. That way, my plan is just to burn through the story and read it like a normal novel. So I'm having wonderful success. I had a lot of trouble with the Kevin Trudeau's Mega Memory because there were just a lot of roadblocks that you have removed those roadblocks. So I'm just so super excited. Just want to share my success and say thank you. Bye-bye.
And if you'd like a demonstration from me of a full recitation of a long-form text that I've memorized, follow the link down below for the Ribhu Gita demonstration. And it's not really about showing off or demonstrating or anything like that, but I want you to see my momentum, because I actually hopped on, gathered an audience, and had a discussion with them about it minutes after I finished memorizing the last word. And what's so extraordinary about the demonstration is not only that it was my first demonstration of the full text, but I also had a lot of distractions going on, and you can see the power and the focus and the bliss of having all of this in memory and what it does for you as a person when you've completed such a project. So the link for the Ribhu Gita demonstration is down below. Now, another quick tip for you around the memory palace is based on something the ancients said. And by ancients, I mean the medieval and the Renaissance. And back in the ancient Greek times, those memory experts, they often wrote in their books, don't use dark places and don't use noisy places. But of course, I'm breaking that rule by using an arcade and starting literally inside the game console of Street Fighter, because the memory palace that I've chosen for the Atma Bodha, that's where it starts, in a Street Fighter game in an arcade. Why choose that? Why go against this ancient wisdom? Well, the reason is I had read Dr. Tim Dalglish's research around how that memory palace work reduces symptoms from PTSD. It helps people resolve issues with depression. And I'd noticed that I was having benefits with my own depression long before I read his research. So I was very, very excited to read what he had been doing with individuals and what they were seeing in terms of some great healing going on. And I often use memory palaces that are only filled with positive memories, like my university classrooms and places that I've lived around the world where I just have such wonderful experiences to draw upon. And I try to avoid ones that are negative. And, it's not like everything is negative with my arcade memory palace, but there are some, kind of strange and weird memories around it. I mean, the reason why I used to go to that arcade is my dad used to send my brother and I to buy cigarettes for him. This is back in like 1987, 88 when Street Fighter came out. And we would use the quarters and go in the back of this convenience store, and it was all dark and smoky in there, and we would play these video games in the dark and so forth. And, it was just a choice to maybe just get some peace from those early times that might still be lingering there. And I know that it works because I memorized a different text called the Nirvana Shatakam, and I deliberately put it in a home that was quite turbulent during a period of my adolescence, and I experienced so much peace around that. So, although I think it is good to have well-lit memory palaces that aren't associated with noise, I also think it's good to experiment, and I have found nothing but joy and bliss and contentment from taking places that have a negative connotation and pushing through anyway, provided that the text itself is very positive in its intent, which is usually what we're doing when we're memorizing long-form text in foreign languages, be it something from the traditions I study in non-duality or the Bible or what have you. So, consider that, and if you find that you ever make a memory palace choice and it's just not gelling, the material just isn't sticking, then move on to something else. All the more reason to have your memory palaces created in advance so that you do have that range of choices. And the one that didn't work on Monday might work on Thursday, so come back with a different text at a different time. Also very, very beneficial, and another reason to have many memory palaces to choose from. If you like tips like these and you find it valuable, please get subscribed, hit that thumbs up, and join our community. The Magnetic Memory Method is all about memorizing text like this, challenging text, and to do it without apps, without too much exposure to software. I mean, it's your brain, and if you want to expose yourself to spaced repetition apps and all that sort of stuff, by all means, but I don't. I like to use the Renaissance and the medieval and the ancient Greek and any more ancient materials that I can find and learn from, like the Aboriginal traditions. That's what I want to do. That's what we're charting on this channel and this journey and adventure together. And the more the merrier. And it's just so wonderful, and I'm thankful to all our channel members. So thank you for supporting this. And with that gratitude in mind, let's carry on with the next tip, which is to do your exercises. There are a number of ways to think about the exercises that help make long form memorization so successful. So let's start with the most literal meaning of the word exercise, which is to exercise your body. Before you sit down to memorize, make sure that you do some progressive muscle relaxation. Maybe a bit of, study some Qigong. There's lots of Qigong videos, or Tai Chi, and do some breathing. This is very, very important. Now, there's lots of ins and outs into what you can do with breathing and movement, but the point is to be more in your body so that you can reduce the monkey mind chatter. Meditate a little so that when your mind says, this is too hard, this is too much, you can push it away much easier and get focused on the moment. Now, the practice itself will help you reduce the monkey mind, especially when you follow another tip that I have coming up for you. But you sometimes, you just got to get started so that you can get the benefit from the practice itself. And that's one of the best ways, is to intervene on the mind by priming the body. Now, another exercise that you want to do is to make sure that you have magnetic imagery, and then you can work with your magnetic imagery in a very short blast before you apply it to the text. So let's say you were memorizing the opening of the Hebrew Bible, Bereshit bara, Elachim, this sort of thing. And you're not ready for that kind of challenge yet. So what you can do is just go through the alphabet, one of the alphabet lists that I teach you to create, and you just get yourself started. So you're thinking about Alex Trebek and, Brad Pitt and all this stuff. And then when it's like Bereshit bara, well, you're much more likely to just have Brad Pitt, right? Because you got all those BR sounds. So you've warmed yourself up. There's plenty of creativity studies that show that a small little creative warm-up before the big task at hand makes the big task at hand much, much easier. And you can also do cool down. And sometimes the way that I do this is I'll memorize a quarter of a deck of cards or something like that, maybe even just 4 or 5 cards, or just do some random vocabulary memorization in English, then sit down for the heavy lifting with one of the texts in Sanskrit that I'm memorizing. Then to cool down, I'll either do, a little bit more Qigong sort of movement and breathing, or I'll just recall the cards or the vocabulary words that I had memorized before. And it doesn't matter whether those things are right or wrong. It's just going through the motions to just cool down a little bit. Now, if you need help going through exercises to warm yourself up, people like Eric and Daniela Lopez and many others have told me they absolutely love the Memory Palace Meditation Maximizer MP3s. I know that's a mouthful, but they're in the master plan at the end of that course in the Magnetic Memory Method Masterclass. So if you haven't gone through them yet, please listen to them. They are based on pretty much what I do in my head as one of my warm-ups, and they will really, really help you get out of your head and into the techniques themselves and help you train yourself so that you can drop into it automatically. Now, another tip that I have for you that is so essential is maybe going to sound like, yeah, duh, but I think it's really, really important, and it'll help you understand another technique that I use to memorize the books out of order. So basically, you got to take it one word at a time. And you might be thinking, how are you going to memorize something out of order if you're taking it one word at a time? But the reality is that's how this is done. Once you have your memory palaces in place, you have magnetic imagery, or what I sometimes call mental Lego, that you can associate word for word, like I gave you that example with Bereshit bara. You've got to just take it one word at a time. And you want to move from the left to the right, or if it's Hebrew, from the right to the left, as the case may be, and move through your memory palace, sort of like weaving the associations into place. But because it's long form memorization, it really is one word at a time. Now, if you're memorizing a text in your mother tongue, then you can sometimes get multiple words with one association. With my TEDx, for example, I was able to memorize sometimes up to 17 words. Well, 17 was where I maxed out on one particular station. But I'd say it's generally around 10 to 15 words per station was kind of an average for something in my own mother tongue. And that's because you know the grammar so well, you don't need images for if, he, them, she, it, they, that sort of stuff. But in a foreign language, you may need images for each and every one of those words. So if that's the case, then just use images for them. If you have your exercises done, you will be able to have an association for each and every one of them. Now, if you're more intermediate and advanced, Another thing that you can do is number your stations, and this will give you an association on each and every station in the memory palace to get the ball rolling. However, the reason why it's intermediate and advanced is because it requires you to have pretty decent knowledge of another system that's called a 00 to 99 PAO system. Or at least that's one of the things that it's called. There's sometimes many, many different names to talk about the same sort of strategy. In any case, I call it a 00 to 99 PAO, and basically what it is an image for every two digit between 00 and 99. So for example, on the 50th station of this book, I have Wonder Woman. And the reason why I have Wonder Woman is because her lasso helps me remember 50. Why? Because 5 is an L and 0 is an S in this particular configuration. And there's different ways to configure it. And, it's just really, really rewarding to have this skill. Not only does it let you remember section numbers or verse numbers, but you can use it to memorize pages, which then helps you not only go back and, grab little bits of details that you might have missed. So, for example, in the Atmaboda, there is commentary, and so after I've memorized what the text is, I might just want to go back and just grab a couple keywords from the commentary to help me remember how it's been interpreted, and then I can stick it in that place, but I can also memorize the entire text out of order. So I have done 1 to 6, and then I just skipped to 50, and now I can go to 27, and I can go to 33, and I know exactly where they are because I numbered each and every station when I created the memory palace. But the point remains the same. As I memorize each individual verse, it's one word at a time, just like stringing beads onto a thread. Now you might be wondering, should I focus on the foreign language first and add the translation later, or should I start with my mother tongue and then add the foreign language text? I would suggest you always work with the target language first, because there are multiple translations with most of these texts. And if you know the original text, you'll be able to really get into those multiple translations and get curious and have clues as to why different people have translated them in different ways. Another reason why it's so powerful to just focus on that target original language is because you'll develop pattern recognition a lot faster. And one of the benefits that you have when you do this for the long term with multiple texts is that pattern recognition will help you speed up your process with the actual encoding using associations in memory palaces. So here's what I mean. In the Upadesa Sharam, which is another text I memorized in another memory palace, it has a line, Kriti Mahodado Patana Karanam Phalamashashvatam Gati Nirotakam. And then I come to memorize the Atmaboda, and there's a word in there in the 50th verse, which is Mohurnava. And then I instantly see Mo, and I go, that must be the word ocean, must be related to ocean. And lo and behold, it is. And that pattern recognition means that I don't need to assign a new image. I can just refer back to the previous memory palace and wormhole it in. That's how I think about it, magnetic wormholing. And it just makes things a lot faster. And it happens a lot when you're working with a foreign language text progressively over time. It's wonderful. The next tip I have for you is to get very, very scientific about using recall rehearsal. So recall rehearsal is essentially my term for a scientific mixture of what's called active recall and harnessing the power of primacy effect and recency effect through serial positioning effect. It's a mouthful, I know, but that's what you get when you use memory techniques. You're able to use the lingo, whether it's the scientific foreign language or it's the foreign language of the book that you're memorizing. And it's a beautiful feeling and all the more reason to get into it. So recall rehearsal is itself such a wonderful thing to learn about and study and apply, but the basics are that when you go through a memory palace, you want to run that text forward and backward. You want to start in the middle of the memory palace and go forward. You want to start in the middle and go backward, and you want to skip all the stations. Now, skipping the stations is a bit of a challenge, but basically what it ends up looking like, and I just said, Kriti Mahodado Patana Karanam Phalamashashvatam Geti Nirotakam. So it's like literally Kriti, Patana, Phalam, like I'm just skipping words, and then you go backwards. Now, if you're new to it, it's going to stretch your brain. It's really, really challenging. However, we know from active recall studies that this is one of the things that forms memories in the brain so much faster. So please make sure you make yourself a very, very strict scientist of memory and apply it scientifically if you want to be able to memorize foreign language text with momentum. My next tip for you is to assign the time for it and a place, but not just the time and place to memorize, but the time and place to also reflect on the knowledge that you are putting into your mind. Because if you don't think about it, you can't enjoy it. But it should be like a fine wine that you stir around in your mind and have these multiple aha moments. I get it. With the material that I study, it's really dense, heavy, non-dual philosophy, what in more modern times they sometimes call dialectism, and it's got a lot of paraconsistencies. I mean, it's not that that's what they call it now, but you could call it that. They're basically trying to work out how is it possible for two things to be true at the same time without contradiction. So a dialectism, another word that I've memorized using these techniques. Di means two, and aletheia is the Greek word for truth. So how can two things be true at the same time without a contradiction? Wow, this is amazing. But you don't get these revelations to figure out what's all going on in these texts if you, A, haven't memorized it, and B, haven't set aside time to sit and reflect on it and really allow it to process and to percolate. And another reason why this is so important is because it'll get you off the apps. It will get you off the dopamine spikes that yank your brain around and make it hard to focus and concentrate. This will give you tonic dopamine, which is regular and stable and level throughout the day. And the more that you do this and you get tonic dopamine flowing for yourself, the more you're going to be hungry to memorize more. And it becomes like an automatic little engine that drives you to show up, memorize more, and fulfill yourself more. It's absolutely fantastic. Now, here's the thing. Entire books, and this is an entire book, it's quite a short one, but it's still an entire book. Do you have to memorize an entire book in order to benefit from getting the tonic dopamine that long-term memorization projects create in your brain? Well, the answer is no, and I've mentioned the Song Celestial already. It is an extract of some of the best parts of the Bhagavad Gita, so you can reflect on just those parts rather than having to read the whole thing. And when you have a portion of it, or maybe the whole thing in your memory, then when you go back and read the entire whole, you see how it all pieces together so much better. Another thing to consider is that so many texts are built of what? The important words? No, they're built of the unimportant words. The, and, if, he, she, it, they, them, and that can be kind of discouraging. So if you find texts that extract from other texts that just cut to the quick, get to the meat of the matter, so to speak, and I don't mean meat in the sense of meaningless edutainment absurdly thriving on the internet, but I mean just the core essence of a text. Upadesa Sharem means the essence of the teaching. It's just so beautiful to be able to get that, get the big picture overview and some of the granular details in a singular text. So you don't even have to memorize an entire book in order to benefit. And if you don't want to take my word for it, well, I've got more details around this in my video about 80-20 reading, which I highly recommend. Go ahead and click or tap wherever that 80-20 video appears on your screen, or find it down in the description below. With thanks as always to our channel members, everyone who has a Magnetic Memory Method book or course, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your support, and go on and get out there and memorize something, anything in a foreign language, so you can start to benefit from the reconfiguration and the health of that tonic dopamine flowing regularly, and what you might say magnetically, through your brain. And wow, it feels so good. I can't wait to hear how it goes as you flow.